Something strange happens to the most qualified person in the room. They prepare more than anyone else. They know the material cold. They have the credentials, the track record, the results. And yet, when decisions are made, when promotions are handed out, when attention shifts to who actually matters, they get passed over. Again, you would think competence speaks for itself. It does not. In fact, research from Harvard and Princeton reveals something far more disturbing. High competence without a specific counterbalancing signal does not create respect. It creates suspicion. It triggers a defensive response in the people around you, and the more skilled you become, the more invisible you can get. This is the presence shift, where we decode the invisible signals that determine who commands the room and who gets ignored. In the next few minutes, you're going to understand exactly why expertise fails to translate into influence. You will see the psychological trap that captures almost every high performer, a trap so counterintuitive that knowing about it changes everything. More importantly, you will learn what actually separates the experts who command attention from those who fade into the background. It is not about being more confident. It is not about speaking up more. The difference is happening at a level most people never even consider. Let me show you what the research actually says. Social psychologist Susan Fiske, along with Amy Cuddy and Peter Glick, spent years mapping how humans evaluate each other. They discovered something remarkable. When you meet someone, your brain asks exactly two questions, in a specific order. First, what are this person's intentions toward me? Are they friend or foe? Only after that question is answered does your brain ask the second question. Can they act on those intentions? Are they capable? Fiske calls these dimensions warmth and competence. And here is the part that changes everything. These two factors account for 82% of how we perceive other people. Not their credentials, not their experience, not their intelligence, warmth and competence. And warmth always comes first. This is an evolutionary inheritance. Our ancestors needed to know if someone approaching their campfire was going to help them or hurt them. Capability mattered, but only after safety was established. Your brain still runs this ancient program. It assesses warmth before it even registers competence. Solomon Asch demonstrated this in 1946 with a simple experiment. He gave participants identical lists of traits describing a person, changing only one word, warm or cold. When the word was warm, 90% rated the person as happy. When the word was cold, only 66% did. Same person, same traits. One word changed the entire perception. Now here is where it gets dangerous for competent people. Fiske's research identified 4 quadrants based on different warmth and competence combinations. High warmth and high competence earns admiration. That is the goal. High warmth and low competence earns pity. People feel sorry for you. Low warmth and low competence earns contempt. People dismiss you entirely. But there is a 4th quadrant, low warmth combined with high competence. And this quadrant does not earn respect. It earns envy. Envy is not admiration. It is an ambivalent emotion that mixes reluctant respect with active resentment. Fiske's research shows that people in this quadrant receive what she calls passive facilitation but active harm. Your colleagues will cooperate with you when it is convenient. But when stress hits, when resources are scarce, when someone needs to be thrown under the bus, you become the target. Her colleague Maria Ciccara documented this with brain imaging. When participants watched negative things happen to cold but competent people, their facial muscles showed micro-smiles. Their brain's reward centers lit up. They experienced pleasure at someone else's misfortune. This is not about disliking someone. It is a neurological response to perceived threat. And this is the invisible trap. You work harder. You develop more expertise. You build a stronger track record. And without realizing it, you climb higher in the competence dimension while your warmth signals stay flat. The better you get, the more threatening you become. Not to your enemies, to your colleagues, to your peers, to the very people who decide your fate. Research from Harvard Business Review confirms this pattern. In a study of over 10,000 work relationships, when people were given a choice between a highly competent but less likable colleague and a less skilled but more likable one, they consistently chose likability over ability. The researchers called this the competent jerk problem. And they discovered that personal feelings function as a gating factor. If someone is disliked, their competence becomes almost irrelevant. There's even a psychological phenomenon called the compensation effect. When you perceive someone as high on one dimension, your brain automatically assumes they must be lower on the other. See someone as brilliant, your brain assumes they must be cold, robotic, calculating. This trade-off happens unconsciously. You did not choose to be seen this way. Your competence itself triggered the inference. A 2023 study surveyed over 4,700 people across 103 countries. 87% reported having their achievements actively undermined. 77% had accomplishments downplayed. 72% were excluded from important meetings. The top reported cause was jealousy and envy. Being too good at your job made you a target. But here is what most people miss entirely. All of this research assumes the judgment is happening based on your behavior, your track record, your demonstrated abilities. It is not. Princeton psychologist Alexander Todorov proved that trait judgments form in 100 milliseconds. That is 1/10 of a second. Your face was evaluated before you finished your first sentence, before you could mention your credentials, before your competence could even be observed. In follow-up studies, increasing exposure time made people more confident in their judgments. It did not make them more accurate. Your brain locks in its assessment almost instantly, then spends the rest of the interaction confirming what it already decided. Todorov took this research further. He showed photographs of political candidates to people who had never seen them before, asking only who looked more competent. Those snap judgments predicted 70% of actual election outcomes. When he asked participants to deliberate carefully instead of responding instinctively, their predictive accuracy got worse, not better. The fast system outperforms the slow one when it comes to status assessment. So what is your brain actually detecting in that first 10th of a second? This is where Stephen Porges's polyvagal theory becomes essential. Porges identified 3 distinct states your nervous system can occupy. The first is ventral vagal, sometimes called social engagement. In this state, your voice has natural melody. Your face is animated. Your posture is open. You're capable of genuine connection. The second state is sympathetic activation, the fight or flight response. Your body mobilizes. Your attention narrows to threats. The third state is dorsal vagal, a shutdown or freeze response. Porges discovered that humans have a specialized detection system for reading these states in others. He called it neuroception. It operates below conscious awareness. Before you consciously perceive someone, your nervous system has already scanned them for safety or danger. Their vocal tone, their facial micromovements, their posture, the subtle tension in their body, all of it processed in milliseconds, generating a gut feeling you cannot explain. When you walk into a room feeling anxious, uncertain, or defensive, your nervous system is in sympathetic activation, and neuroception in every person watching reads that state. Not your words, not your credentials, your state. Psychologist Paul Ekman documented how emotions leak through suppression attempts. Microexpressions flash across your face in 1/25th to 1/5 of a second, too fast to consciously control. Researcher Waxer found that observers could identify anxiety from silent video alone by detecting hand tremors, gaze aversion, facial tension, and torso positioning. Bodies leak more truthful information than faces because we consciously control our expressions more than our posture. Here is what this means for the competent person who keeps getting overlooked. Your expertise is real, your track record is genuine, but you walk into rooms with a nervous system broadcasting uncertainty. Your voice rises at the end of statements, signaling a need for validation. You hedge your language with phrases like, I think, or sort of, or just reducing your perceived competence and trustworthiness. Studies show over 80% of people prefer to hire candidates who do not exhibit vocal patterns associated with uncertainty. You're not failing to prove your competence. You're broadcasting threat signals that prevent people from ever registering your competence. The judgment happens in 100 milliseconds. Your credentials arrive too late. The experts who command attention are not necessarily more skilled than you. Research on dominance versus prestige pathways to status shows there are 2 routes to influence. Dominance takes status through intimidation and coercion. People comply, but do not like you. Prestige earns freely given deference based on demonstrated value and genuine respect. Only prestige creates the warmth plus competence combination that produces admiration. And prestige is not about proving yourself more aggressively. It emerges from a regulated nervous system that signals safety rather than threat. A calm internal state produces the exact external signals that trigger respect. Prosodic voice, relaxed posture, unhurried movement, genuine eye contact. These are not behaviors to imitate. They are outputs of a ventral vagal state. Executive presence research confirms this. Sylvia Ann Hewlett found that gravitas accounts for 67% of what we call executive presence. The top trait within gravitas is grace under fire, the ability to project confidence under pressure. This is not acting skill. It is regulatory capacity, the ability to maintain a social engagement state even when challenged. Through mirror neuron systems, a regulated leader actually stabilizes the nervous systems of people around them. Your calmness can literally downregulate stress in your team. But the reverse is also true. Dysregulation, rushed speech, defensive posture, scattered focus triggers unease in others at a subconscious level, regardless of what you're saying. The shift begins before you enter the room. The people who command presence have trained their vagal tone, the communication pathway between brain and body that determines baseline calm. When vagal tone is strong, your parasympathetic system dominates. Heart rate slows naturally. Breathing deepens naturally. The face relaxes. The voice drops into its resonant range. None of this requires conscious effort. It is the natural output of a regulated state. The practice is not about performing confidence. It is about creating the internal conditions that produce confident outputs. Before high-stakes situations, take 90 seconds. Breathe in for 4 counts, hold for 4, out for 8. The extended exhale directly stimulates the vagus nerve and shifts your physiological state. But breathing alone is not enough. You must also shift your internal narrative. Instead of "do not mess this up," which triggers threat response, you run a different frame. I am walking in as someone who belongs here. I am observing, not performing. This reframes the situation from threat to curiosity, and your nervous system responds accordingly. Think about the last time you walked into a room and felt your status shrink. The conference room where you were the most qualified person, but somehow the least influential. The meeting where your ideas were dismissed, then praised when someone else repeated them. The interview where your credentials were impeccable, but something just did not click. You were not making a mistake in those moments. Your nervous system was in a state that broadcast low status before you spoke. Your warmth signals were suppressed. Your competence was triggering threat, not admiration. And you had no idea because the signals operate below conscious awareness. Now you see the mechanism. The shift does not happen overnight. It is neural pathway formation. Every time you practice state regulation before entering a room, you strengthen the connection between conscious intention and nervous system response. Over time, the reset becomes automatic. You walk in already in a ventral vagal state. No technique required. Your warmth is evident. Your competence registers as valuable rather than threatening. The trap releases its grip. Presence is not something you perform. It is the output of your internal state. Change the state, and the presence follows. Stop trying to prove what you know. Start becoming someone whose nervous system broadcasts safety. The room will respond before you say a word. Presence is not performed. It is rewired. The shift has already begun. If you want to understand what is really happening in every room you enter, subscribe. The next video goes deeper into the voice patterns that create natural authority and why most people have trained themselves to be ignored.